Okay, folks, I want to call the study session of the City of Farmers Ranch City Council to order. The time is 6 p.m. The date is May the 16th, 2023. And the first item on the agenda is discussed regular agenda items. Does anybody have any questions about tonight's agenda they'd like further classification or qualifications on?
He said it was 6 verbally.
The time is what the time is, so.
Okay.
It's 3 o'clock, Mayor.
3 o'clock, what did I say, 6? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading up here. Sorry, Mayor. Okay. So is there anything on the tonight's agenda that you would like to have further classification on or information?
Mayor, I have a question on item L2, the Woven Clinic.
Okay.
If my understanding is correct, this is actually a request for funding under a contract for services. Is that correct, Ben?
In this case, we need to make sure we're a little bit clear on this one. We're not asking for any direction on funding right now. This is just their standard report to council. Once you've received all of their reports as of the next meeting, then we'll bring them all back as far as the contracts for service for council consideration. So a little bit of a mislabeling there. It should not have said and take appropriate action. There is no action scheduled for this one tonight
Okay.
until you have all of them to consider as a whole basket of goods and then get direction to staff on where you'd like to see the funding levels for these. So we have this one tonight. We'll have the rest at the next meeting.
Okay, very good.
Answer your questions, Richard?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And that's all I have.
That it? Anybody else? Okay. Let's move on to A2 is discuss potential ordinance regarding electric vehicle charging and solar-ready requirements for new construction.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor, Council, Alex Farmikas, Sustainability Manager. I'll be doing a presentation today to get some feedback and direction on potential ordinances around solar-ready and EV charging. So these were listed in the sustainability plan as recommended actions with the goal to reduce barriers of adoption for both solar and electric vehicles. So we'll start in with the electric vehicle charging portion. So a little bit of background terminology here. There's kind of 3 levels to EV charging codes. You'll see EV capable. This is the kind of the cheapest option. It just ensures that when they're putting, parking in, there's electrical panel capacity for future charging and a raceway. There's no conduit, there's no charger. It's just where in the future a charging port could be added relatively easy. EV ready is kind of the next step up. All of the attributes of EV capable with the 240 volt outlet. So this would be like in a single family home, an extra 240 volt like you would have for your clothes dryer just in your garage that could, an EV charger could very easily plug into. And then the last is EV installed. And that is everything that was listed before, but with the charging station already mandated in there. So the prices, these are estimated cost based from another city. And so that's kind of the terminology to be familiar with as we go through this. So the reasoning behind EV charging codes, vehicles are our primary source of air pollution. So if you've been in here, obviously in the summers, we see those ozone exceedance days, air pollution watch days. We had 48 in 2022. The majority of those emissions, those NOx emissions that cause that ozone, is from the on-road transportation. We have a goal to decrease vehicle emissions. And DOE has the stat that 80% of vehicle charging takes place at the home. This is kind of looking at being proactive, not reactive. So the cost to install this capable infrastructure is a lot cheaper when you're doing a new construction versus a retrofit. So having that higher cost to do a retrofit could be a barrier for someone to adopt an electric vehicle. So the recommendation here is based on ICC model language. This would only apply to new construction. On the residential side, it would be 1 EV ready, so that's that 240 volt outlet, space per dwelling unit. On the multifamily side, that would be a minimum number of an actual charging port, so at least 1 or 2, depending on the number of parking spots, with 20% of those total parking spaces being EV capable. So that's having the panel capacity to accommodate future chargers. On the commercial side, there's no recommendation for EV charging codes. This was from the Sustainability Committee. They didn't want to put that burden on a commercial entity, especially given that stat of 80% of charging taking place overnight at the home. So that is the recommendation there. I can stop there if we want to do questions on just the electric vehicle charging portion, or I can go ahead and go through the solar ready, and we can just do questions for both at the end. It doesn't matter to me.
Council, questions on,
I actually do have a question. It comes to me because I've seen 2 or 3 that are at either the library or another location where they go and they plug in and they plug everything in, cell phone, car, every piece of technology, and they kind of take a nap there. So is this, in doing this, going to save us as a municipality money and on individuals having to do things like that? I mean, I guess my question is why is there any incentive when they purchase a car to actually, for them to get funding to put a station in their own home, as opposed to pulling up and looking like they're camping out at the library, charging everything and taking a nap?
So there would definitely be a convenience factor of charging at home. I'm not sure, depending on some, I believe, models, if you buy a certain brand of vehicle, they will like give you the charger with it. These codes would just be so it's a lot easier to adapt that charging. But it is potential that if you had more accessible charging at your home, you would be less likely to charge when you visit a public building or your place of work.
So I have a question. Originally I had a question as to whether we've talked to some of the different builders in the community, and it looks like and we've gotten some feedback from them. Have we spoken specifically to the multifamily builders or developers about this?
So we spoke on the residential side to 2 local home builders. They're starting to do this already in their builds by adding that 240 volt outlet in the garage. They're starting to get asked about that. On the multifamily, I believe one of the newest multifamily that's coming up, they're already talking about incorporating PACE funding and with that EV charging. But that's the only conversation we've had with multifamily.
Yeah, I'm just curious if the ultimate goal is to increase the number of electric vehicles and reduce dangerous toxins into the air. How is putting this requirement on multifamily going to achieve that? Because ideally, what a multifamily complex could do is they could meet the requirement per the ordinance, but not move forward to step 3, which would be to install the charger. And they could just leave it alone, and it's just an expense initially. But
So
they're just
with-
meeting. So I'm trying to see and understand, if, do they seem like they're all going in that direction where they're wanting to do this? Does it seem that other cities who are already implementing a similar ordinance, are those complexes going the extra mile and installing the chargers?
So
That's what
I
I'm trying
think
to
there
figure
are
out.
some multifamily already in the Metroplex that are going
Right.
this direction just without it being mandated. As it's currently written, they would have to, no matter what size the multifamily complex, there would have to be 1 installed charging point or charging port there, and then the rest would be the EV capable. So there would be, it would be easier for them to move along, let's say, as, more and more people adopt vehicles that are electric. They could do that, but there would actually be 1 that would be mandated. So it would get that usage. I would think that on the multifamily side, if you look at all the automakers, most of them have commitments by 2030, 50% of their models will be electric or new models. So we're seeing a trend in the market with that. We're just trying to help, push that in the right direction. So I would think, given those market trends, a lot of these multifamily are going to be seeing that as an amenity that they can attract tenants. So, if you have EV charging, and they can charge a fee for it. There's no restriction on that. So they have a charger that they have to be installed by the ordinance. They could still charge their residents, a fee to use that.
Okay,
Councilman.
sure.
Shane Davis, Director of Sustainability and Public Health. So I sit on the Development Review Committee, and so the new apartment complex being proposed at Judge Street along 35, they are currently looking at that, this ordinance being in place, so putting in a couple of EV charging stations. So we are seeing them preparing, I think, on their end too, for what's coming in terms of vehicles and as an amenity. So I can say for the most recent ones coming, they're down this already looking to put them in on their own.
Okay, thank you.
I have to imagine, Alex, that these multifamily units having electric vehicle charging stations is going to become sort of a competitive element for the properties, right? People are going to want to be at a place where they can charge their vehicles. My question is more in light of the stations we have at city properties today. Are we charging people to use those?
Currently, we are not. We have 3 more chargers that we're going to be putting in, 2 at the rec center and 1 more at City Hall. Once we get all those up and running, we've been tracking the data. That'll be presented to council if you want to charge a fee for that. It would be added in our, I guess, normal fee structure like we have for other city services. So we can definitely provide that information. But right now, because we're sort of new at this, we haven't been charging a fee because we're trying to make sure that everything's running smoothly.
Right.
But we can take that to council in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any question on it? Sarah, the second part.
All right, second part is solar ready. So what this means is it's a building that can easily accommodate solar. This does not mandate solar is installed with new construction. It just means that it'll be easier to add on later. And so these attributes include continuous roof space that's uninterrupted by roof equipment and having that electric panel capacity. And it does include exemptions. So if there's a new, site but has really tall trees blocking, there are exceptions where they wouldn't have to meet this requirement. Pretty similar reasoning. Citywide, we use a lot of electricity. It's responsible for a lot of our emissions. We want to increase that renewable energy, remove those barriers for adoption. One of the other things too is we facilitate the solar switch program already that helps homeowners adopt solar. So we want to be proactive. We want the left hand to talk to the right hand kind of on, if we're promoting a solar program, we're promoting a demo rebuild where we're encouraging new development, that those programs can kind of work well with one another, and it can be easier to adopt solar. And it is same like the EV, much cheaper to install this during construction versus during a renovation. So the recommendation here is under new construction only. On the residential side, we're adopting the wording of the International Energy Conservation Code, Appendix RB. There are some slight modifications that we've made on this after discussing with local builders, and so those modifications aim to reduce the planning and construction costs associated with that EV ready. And then from commercial buildings, it would be the same. It would be the exact wording from the appendix in the IECC. So that's the information here. There's more in the packet, but I can answer any questions right now.
Any questions, folks?
I have a question, Alex.
Michael?
Are we still using ChargePoint for the stations that the city provides?
For the ones that the city provides, yes, they're all on that network and they're all connected to the internet. That's how we get the data.
Are they, or will they be one of the leading players also in providing this for people in their homes?
They do have home products, but it would be open to whatever people decide. So if you're a multifamily owner, you can pick whatever charger you want that meets general requirements for the level 2 charging, which is similar to what we have at our buildings. But if you're a homeowner, you have that 240 volt outlet in your garage, it's really up to you where you can find the lowest price or the brand that you like.
Right. But ChargePoint does compete in that marketplace.
They do have,
Yeah.
yes, they have home chargers.
Okay.
You have a question, Jerry?
Thank you.
If at some point in time this is adopted, how do you intend on communicating this information to the building community as well as people who are taking advantage of demo rebuild or any other program here in the city?
So that would go through a lot of our existing channels. Community services is going to be doing a lot of that because they're already in line with that community, the builders. They do the building inspections. So they would be kind of the main department as far as helping educate builders and developers in the area. We would provide support for that. And that's something we can include on our web pages too with demo rebuild that, if you're looking into that, that might be something that motivates someone to do a demo rebuild is, hey, I can get it where it's easy to install solar. If I build a new home here in Farmers Branch, I can get solar, I can get a battery, I can get the Encore incentives, I can do all of that. So it could potentially be used as an economic development tool with that. I don't want to speak for Allison on that, but.
Let me say something to you folks. I've been older and around here older than dirt, but I've seen a lot of technology come along as people says, oh, this is going to be the great thing and happen and this is all that. And, you know, I can remember on October the 4th, 1957, when the Soviet Union shot a 23-inch metal spear up in the atmosphere and everybody panicked. And we didn't know what to do, and everybody went out, and Eisenhower, and a year later formed NASA. They came around and to the schools and talked to us about how far we were behind, everything we needed to do to catch up, and we were going to have to be studying science and space and all this stuff, and you know, it was a big assembly in school. We asked the fellow from NASA, said, how soon are we going to put a man on the moon? He looked at us like we were absolutely crazy. He said, that will never be done in this century. He said, to take a person, and I almost remember verbatim, fragile as a human being, and send them 283,000 miles through space and land them on a foreign object. He said, we can't do that without killing them. And he said, it would take a rocket ship as tall as the Empire State Building to get them there. Well, 10 years and 4 months after that happened, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. And I know Neil Armstrong retired and he moved to my hometown after he got back, was a professor at University of Cincinnati. And my brother-in-law played golf with him on a regular basis, and he didn't seem to have any difficulties playing golf. And so, and you know, this is kind of a scenario too. When I first got on the council back in the 80s, we first started using satellite dishes. They put up satellite. Well, satellite dishes then, the fiberglass ones were 6 to 8 foot in diameter, and the metal cage ones were about 10 feet in diameter. And boy, and we started having to have special use permits to put these things out. And every time we did it, some neighbors would come in, they didn't like them. Some people had to put them in the front yard to make them work and all this kind of stuff. And I asked the guy the question, I said, well, how soon will those things ever get down to a size where they're manageable? He said, oh, that will probably never happen either. This is technology. Well, 4 years later, I put one on my father-in-law's house in Kentucky that wasn't even bigger than a dishpan. And so what I'm trying to tell you here, you know, technology changes with this stuff. What I'm reading about solar panels are getting much more efficient than what they're doing. And hopefully they're not going to be these massive sizes that we're now experiencing. And they're saying, the other thing they're saying about them is that they're worried, they have about a 20, 25-year lifespan. They're worried, what are they going to do with all this stuff when they have to start taking it off the roofs? And where are they going to put it in landfills? So, you know, the other thing I'm trying to tell you, I appreciate us trying to be on the cutting edge of new things. But so many times we did this. You know, early 70s, when recycling came out, we jumped on that here, and we bought little trailers, and it had actually curbside separation, where the guy went out there and he separated your trash and all that. And it was a neat little system, but there was no market for it. We couldn't sell the stuff. And we got in this tight time in economics, and the staff come and recommend we did away with it. So we did away with it for a number of years, and then we finally gotten back into it. And that's just the question. I don't want to get too far ahead of our skis here on some of this stuff, because technology does change, and pressure's going to change, because a lot of people don't like the looks of those things on their house. And so I think there's going to be a lot of technology comes along with these things before we see the final product that's really the accepted product being used. So I would kind of tread lightly on some of this stuff of pushing too much of it. You know, when you start telling people they can't put drain vents and stuff on their house only a certain area, that's mean you're going to move bathrooms, you're going to do a lot of things. And I just think that's kind of a iffy ground to get into. So I appreciate it. I know you know, everybody wants to save the planet. Everybody wants to do what's technically viable. But I just think we have to walk pretty softly on some of this stuff. So. Any other questions?
Well, what's the next step? So now you've presented this,
So,
and where do we
just
go?
gathering the feedback from council, and we could take it as a regular agenda item as early as the next council meeting, first one in June, if that's the direction that we give. Yes.
Sure, go ahead, sure.
All right, so if that's what you're looking to do, then I just want to throw out a comment. Obviously, you had recommended actions down here, assist residents with utility conservation incentives and rebates. Well, who's going to pay for that, number one?
So the utility incentives and rebates are already established through Encore and through Atmos. So Encore, I believe, will give up to $8,000 in a rebate for solar panels for residential.
Okay.
If they install solar with a battery. And Atmos currently does rebates already that are for, I believe, hot water heaters and other gas-powered appliances. So if you purchase a new one of those that meets their requirement, you actually get that funding from Atmos. The solar likewise is
Some
through
of that
Encore.
information when you bring this forward again?
Yes.
Okay, I think that would be good to have. And again, when you said explore the feasibility of creating a residential rebate program, so I assume you're still talking about the Encore and Atmos rebates or incentives that they have. Make no mistake that if we decide to move forward with this, there is going to be added costs to homeowners.
Yes.
Or to builders who are building spec homes. And so, my only concern, while we're trying to do something to position us for the future and our new homes for the future, is I want to be very careful that it doesn't become too onerous on those builders or whoever's paying to have that house built by mandating this. I still think this should be up to the individual homeowner, whether they want to take advantage of installing solar and the rest of the stuff. So, just something to think about.
Any others?
I have just a comment.
Sure.
Mayor, if you don't mind. I'm supportive, because if we look at slide 9, the cost on a 2-story residential home is $1,000. Given the cost of today's new homes, that's negligible in the total price of a new home. If the homeowner doesn't take advantage of installing solar panels, they have a stronger roof, right? The specs say that you're requiring a 5-pound per square foot collateral load on the roof. I don't know what it is today.
I think it's actually the same as what it is today.
It's the same. So today's roofs generally will hold the solar panels.
Yes, generally so. And
Okay.
then we took out, as far as the appendice, as far as the load documentation, we took out that because that would require a professional engineer to sign off,
Okay,
which is typically not done for single-family homes on the roof.
okay.
I think,
So actually, it is done. So, this will get the houses solar ready when they're under construction. But, as far as somebody wanting to put solar on it, one of our requirements is they have to do a structural evaluation. So I guess in the state, it was recommended in there to do that, but we made the decision to make it easier on the builders now to not require it until the solar, because we already require it when solar gets installed. So rather than putting it in both places, we left it with the solar. We've never, even with some of the houses that we have that are really old, 50s and 60s, we have not run into any that have had problems with load issues. The panels are pretty light. They're like 3.5 pounds per square foot or something like that, I think. So they're pretty light, so we haven't ran into any issues, but we do require a structural evaluation and load calculations and all this kind of stuff when we do plan review.
Okay. So much of that's already in place today. It's pretty accommodating today. We're just saying, moving forward, if you're building a new house, it's going to have to be solar ready. And
Have we looked into the difference of pricing of that and solar shingles?
So we haven't had any solar shingles so far. We had one submittal, but this was years ago. And at the time, it was such new technology that we couldn't get it to comply with the National Electrical Code and stuff. So hopefully by now they're, getting better about finding compliance for that. Solar shingles are supposed to be super light and easier and stuff than, as far as the weight goes, but I don't know too much about it because we haven't really had any here.
And I think that's just an example of what Mayor Glancy was saying. Technology is going to change very rapidly. And this infrastructure that will be built in the home may or may not accommodate the changing technology. However, I got to think that the new technology takes a lot of that into consideration because they want to build a product that nobody can install, right? So,
I think typically the only time you might have a problem with a roof load situation is in truss-built homes. A lot of truss-built homes are designed for exactly, when they calculate those, they're designed exactly for the load, 5 pounds per square foot of snow and stuff like that. So you might run into a little bit of a problem there, but as far as most of our homes are what we call stick-built. So
they're called what?
we call them stick-built because they're just individually, it's not a truss that comes on a truck that's already designed for your kind of roof. They just make it on site. So we don't run into problems with those, and that's mostly what we have
Okay,
so far.
all right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, all right, thank you. Let's move on to the next item, is to discuss the 23-24 capital improvements program and the future CIP considerations. Okay,
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Ryan Sauter. I'm the Director of Public Works. And today, we get to talk about CIP. This is going to be a high-level discussion. It's more of an overview, letting you guys know where we're at, where we're headed in the future, and what we're going to have to look at in the future. This first slide right here is part of the utility rehab replacement program. Our current and rollover projects are sitting at around $3.7 million. And within that, that includes projects that are ongoing currently, projects that we have identified moving forward as emergency projects that we're going to have to put into motion here in the very near future. Moving forward beyond that, one of our big concerns is the Webb Chapel water main. That's for the most part of that, large majority of that section is from LBJ to Beltline. That's a 12-inch cast iron line. There's a short section of it that's also asbestos cement. The estimated cost to replace that line is around $3.9 million. And that's going to include a large portion of paving replacement in there too, because part of that line is out inside Webb Chapel. The FBOP lift station, that is the Farmers Branch Office Park. This lift station is on the east side of town. It is at I believe it's the Sheraton Hotel now. This is a huge concern for us in Public Works. The electrical components of the station are now underground. When we have heavy rains, it fills up with water. Recently, in the last few months, we had a major failure out there where the generator itself and the electrical components were submerged, caused a huge issue. So we're trying to bring all of that, the electrical components, the generator, bring that above ground, make that lift station a much safer facility, much more reliable facility. A few years ago, 5 years ago, this lift station was actually estimated to be around $1 million to replace. Since then, we're sitting closer to $2 million. Lead and copper rule revision. This is a $2 million project. We're looking at $1.05 million to complete the next 3 phases of the consulting with Freese and Nichols. We're estimating around $1.2 million to remediate the lead concerns within the system once this study's been completed. Webb Chapel at Farmers Branch Creek. This is a water line that actually failed about 2.5 months ago. We've been looking for some technology to replace it that didn't require us going underneath the creek again. We do have an option for that. It's a lining technology that it's been out for about 3.5 years. Right now, we're working through logistics with that company to figure out how we can make this happen through them. I believe we do have a solution. Hopefully, that'll be coming back to council here very quickly. Ford Road water main replacement and protection. This you will be seeing at the next meeting. This is a 12-inch water line under Farmers Branch Creek at Ford Road that has failed. It has created a massive failure on the mattress, the concrete floor of the creek channel, which has collapsed on top of that water main. We're going to be replacing the water main and a section of the creek. We'll also be performing some creek rehabilitation at that location too, to make sure this doesn't happen again in the future. So the engineering and design portion of this will be coming to you probably at the next meeting. And then shortly thereafter, we'll be coming back with a construction proposal as well. Beyond that, we have a total of $22 million in program projects within this particular project account. Moving forward within our with what we have currently budgeted, we're sitting at about $2.1 million available right now. We have $2.5 million programmed out for the next 2 years estimated, and then 3.25 3 years after that. When we get into year 4 of this program with the projects we have identified, we're going to be entering into a $4 million budget shortfall. And that is where, in previous conversations we've had, rescinding the $10 water base rate, that had a $1.03 million effect on the utilities account. And we're looking to rescind that and continue that rescinding, or continue the rescission of that base rate. And that would allow us the opportunity to infuse our utility CIP account with an additional $1 million a year moving forward. Now, moving further out, we went a little bit further with our investigation into utilities rehab and replacement. We took a comprehensive look at what was left out there. We have over 123 miles of pre-1980 non-PVC water main. This is cast iron, this is asbestos cement, RCP, reinforced concrete piping. A lot of these lines were installed and designed with a 50-year lifespan. We're pushing 50 years on some of them. Some of the larger lines, we're pushing 75. So we've got some old pipe in the ground. Estimated cost to bring this up into PVC code, or what is currently required, is about $200 million. It's not something we have to address today. It's not an all or none type deal. This is just a, hey, guess what? We've got some old pipe, and at some point, we're going to have to address it. If we started a 30-year program today, some of this infrastructure would be pushing the century mark before it was replaced. Wastewater, inflow and infiltration, also known as I&I. Our top 5 capital improvements projects on this list are estimated at $1.5 million. We currently have about $1.1 million in that account, and I believe we have $1.5 million programmed in the out years for this particular project account. We have 25 additional wastewater projects identified on this list at a total of $11.1 million. Beyond that, we're looking at 498,000 feet of non-PVC water piping left in the city. This includes 458,000 of clay tile. We also have concrete pipe, cast iron pipe, and ductile iron piping in the city. As you can imagine, sewer line it is anything other than PVC, it tends to fail. Just to replace what is left, the 458,000 feet of clay tile, we'd be looking at about $128 million. So again, as you all know, most of you are familiar because you've seen some of the programs in the past, some of the presentations in the past. Clay tile pipe is something that doesn't last forever. It has lasted 60 and 70 years in this city, but it's going to ultimately fail at some point. Now to the lighter subjects. Streets and traffic. With streets and traffic, oh, the keyboard's in my way. With streets and traffic, moving forward, we're looking to start a 10-year project for replacement of battery backups and relamping of intersections. Our goal is to perform 6 of these a year, and the estimated cost of this would be about $140,000 a year. Good news, we already have money in our street revitalization budget that we can utilize for this currently. However, it would be nice if we could create a separate CIP account to account for this $140,000 a year and utilize that $2.4 million that we currently take in for streets and paving. We do have a project moving forward. We have received notice of grant approval from the Regional Transportation Commission, which is through the North Central Texas Council of Governments, NCTCOG. We're receiving $1.4 million for this particular project. We have identified Valley View from Denton Drive to Josie Lane for this project. And we will be using street revitalization capital improvement funds if needed to push this project over the finish line. That is another one that will be coming to council. We'll be coming in 2 phases for this particular project. We'll be looking for some guidance and direction on design as well as the funding. Pike Street bond. We have identified a project which is already in design. This project is fixing to go into construction. Once we've completed, once we reach the final design phase, it'll go immediately into bid and construction. This is from Denton Drive. This is on Denton Drive, essentially from the south side of the current Star Center up to Pike Street, and then from Denton Drive along Pike down to the service road. And this is part of another development program that is taking place over there. The Pike Street bond is, of course, funding this particular project. We have also identified 8 street rehab projects for 23-24. The estimated cost of these projects is $2.3 million. Stormwater. This particular fund, we're sitting at about $4.8 million currently. We have $1.5 million that is anticipated to fund this particular project every year. We're also looking into the current stormwater fees to ensure that we're not missing something with all the new development. This is probably something that we should be doing about every 3 years with the development that takes place, make sure we're not missing anything. This particular fund has not seen an increase, so it makes me think that something may have slipped through, but we're gonna check and make sure. Top of the list for this is Reach 4. This project has been under design for quite some time. We're about halfway through the design process of this because the creek has changed. We've had to change some tactics on it. But this includes the 2963 Sunback, 2971 Sunback, 12407 Treeview, and 12411 Treeview. The Valley View at Rawhide Bridge. This is one that has already been approved for design through Freese and Nichols. It is now, the contract will be executed this week by Freese and Nichols, and they will start the design of this project out here. Rock Martin at Farmers Branch Creek. This is a sewer main that we replaced. We had a contractor come in and replace to eliminate the creek crossing, but this line now runs along the edge of the creek. So it's one that's been identified as requiring protection because of its location, and that's going to require some type of gabion protection at some point. Rawhide Creek from Valley View to Webb Chapel. We have walked this creek, and the gabion situation on this creek, parts of it are major. They're serious. There's trees that are actually being eroded outside of the gabion protection. The gabions, a lot of them have actually sunk, and some of them are completely submerged now. So this is another section of creek that we are going to have to pay attention to. Our goal is not to lose a ton of the trees that are out there, especially with the root exposure that they have. But gabions are the only way that we're going to be able to protect them. Ford Road, this is east of the water line I was discussed in a previous slide. This is where some of the walls are concrete at this location. The walls have broken down. They have started to fail. The creek has now started to silt in to the base of the concrete floor that is there. So we're looking to open this up, remove a lot of that concrete and what is failed as far as the base flow of the mattress area, and replace all of that, reinforce it. Hopefully we can get a lot longer life out of that section by doing both sides of it. And then Reach 2, this is one that has already been through design. The design process has been completed. This is at FB Creek in Lost Valley. It's estimated at around $800,000. Our goal is to pair this Reach 2 with Reach 4 and hopefully save a good chunk of money on the construction. And then also within the CIP, we have sustainabilities, pedestrian connectivity projects. First off, we have the West Side Art Trail at Campion Trail to Mercer Parkway and from Emerald Street to Denton Drive. This is going to be funded by CMAQ. It's a grant through the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Committee. Funding amount is $4.5 million. The city will be using the transportation development credits for their local match, which saves us a ton of money. B Street sidewalk expansion completion. This is under the Trail Bond Fund for the design and the construction. We're looking at $57,000 for the design, another $460,000 for construction. And then Valley View Lane, Mercer Parkway pedestrian crossing. We're trying to obtain funding through the Transportation Alternative Grant through COG for the construction of this. We're looking at $110,000 for design and $750,000 in construction. There we go. That covers the capital improvement program.
Yeah,
Short and sweet.
yeah.
Lots of numbers, I know.
That's a lot to get your arms around you.
But that is a lot of information. And it's what I get to deal with every day, and I love it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions I possibly can.
Okay, counsel?
Mayor, I've got just a couple of questions. Ryan, thank you very much. Going back to the first couple of slides you had presented on the costs over the next 4 years, $4 million, we're looking at reinstituting the base water rate back up to what it was before, so that'll get us $1 million a year
Yes, sir.
toward this projected $4 million shortfall. So we're gonna get $3 million, right? We have 3 years to go.
Right.
In that shortfall, have you projected cost increase of the materials, or are we using today's
I'm
pricing?
using today's pricing for that.
So that could be even more.
Yes, there is an
shortfall.
opportunity for additional cost in the future. I do know that the estimates we use are slightly inflated right now. Probably not inflated enough to cover the inflation rate that we've seen, but we are using slightly inflated costs per foot when we do calculations for this.
Okay. But our base water rate still is going to get us a static
Yes,
$10 per water bill. So,
that's correct.
all right, thank you. You mentioned the $4.5 million funding we're getting from the Transportation Development Credit Match. Is that the DART?
No, sir.
What is that? What is TDC?
So a while back, you have to do what's called a policy bundle. So we looked at, they have a list of like 20 different policies in the city you can do. Each one's worth a certain amount of points. If you have all these in place, it saves you the cost of using your own money for the match. So they have things like some like anti-idling policy, complete streets policy, space, all ones we got approved, asset management of some type or another. So we looked at everything we're doing already. How many of these do we already have in place? And we submitted a policy bundle for that. We had enough by not really, I think we had to pass one ordinance or one resolution, this is many years ago, to get us up to the number of points we needed. So it's an incentive for cities to implement certain policies to try to reduce emissions. Some of the things we're trying to recommend, say EV ready solar codes, much wish it was in there. It's not one of the policy bundles, so there's no incentive for me to push that any more than what you heard tonight. But it's things of that nature the college is looking for is what are you doing to reduce your emissions, create better transportation, not just for cars, but for people.
Okay.
Things are more along the line of that. So if you put all those together, you submit that to them, if they approve it, so you're good, which we're submitting another round right now for future year TDC applications, then it saves you from using your own money as a match. Otherwise, we'd have to fund 20% of these projects. So West Side Art Trail would be looking for close to $1 million for a match. Right now, we don't have to do that because of these policies we have in place. We're looking at ways, how can we increase that? Well, that means passing some more policies. Each streets is one, increasing 3 more points. So we're trying to figure out what it takes to get us to the next level of funding. And once you kind of identify a plan, we'll come back to y'all and here's what we need to do to get there. Are you comfortable with these or no? Which is just kind of limits our funding we can get in that aspect. We have to find or provide the funding from city resources after that.
Okay.
But it's a way for cities to not spend money to do some projects.
Right.
So it's like we're down through the copy that we use.
Okay.
I don't have much of a CIP budget, so I gotta be creative. That's one thing.
Yeah. I think I understand. That's a lot, so
Yes.
I'm probably going to circle back with you.
No problem. I can give you a memo to that effect. And agree to
Memo
it.
would be great. I'd appreciate the same.
Tommy, I'll go with you.
Yeah. Huh?
I'll go with you.
Okay.
Is the only thing we're dealing with EPA is on the lead in the copper pipe right now? How about asbestos reinforced concrete? Are we up against any issues there?
Not yet, but it's coming. And I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, we're gonna see some form of mandate that targets the asbestos cement. And unfortunately, when you remove AC from the ground, that has to be manifested before it can be sent out to a landfill. So the cost just multiplies when you start dealing with AC pipe. But our focus right now is with cast iron, because cast iron is considered a lead-containing substance. The lead actually attaches itself within the cast iron, and as water flows through it, it leaches back into the system, and it can leach into homes and schools and churches. So we're focusing on our cast iron at this time. But AC is going to be the next push.
Are we going to be able to make that October 2024 deadline for the LCRR?
Yes, that's for the initial assessment and inventory list. We are gonna make that deadline. And we're actually, hopefully, we're gonna save a little bit of money off of this $2 million estimate here. We're trying to do some of this in-house. We've obtained some technology that's gonna allow us to send our guys out and actually identify and plug in the information that's required by the EPA. And if we can get enough of that done in-house, we could save a good chunk of money off of this. We're just trying to get it all implemented to make sure that it runs flawlessly before we do it, so we don't have any hiccups at the end. But yes, we're looking for
Dave,
ways
do you
to
have some
save.
questions?
I do. So on this slide, Richard's already pointed out, year 4, we recognize we have a $4 million shortfall. I want to understand the other dollar amounts that we have. We don't have enough money to cover all those dollar amounts. Is that correct?
Everything that is on this slide right here, we can fund and cover. That is all built into this $22 million.
Okay. Thank you for the
Yes.
clarification. I really want to make sure that we all understood that. And then the shortfall of $4 million is in year 4. And then on subsequent slides, we talk about the larger scale. In this case, the estimated cost of this particular program, $200 million, 128 on the subsequent for clay tile,
Yes.
et cetera. So I just really wanted to focus on that first slide, that we have enough money to cover that, but year 4 is where we project.
Year 4 is where we start to hit the shortfall. That's where we start to run out of money for current projects.
That's 1 out of 4 buckets, if you will, no pun
Right.
intended here with water and stormwater, but the idea of making sure that we can accommodate our needs going forward over multi-year programs in these particular areas is, we can't turn a blind eye to that.
Right. And I was not excited about showing these numbers, but the fact is, y'all are the council. You guys need to know because you're the guys, you're the people that provide the direction in the future. And it's only fair that you actually know what you're dealing with on the infrastructure side. This is stuff that you can't see, but it is the lifeblood of the city.
Right. Very good. Thank you, Ryan. That was my only question.
One other question, Mayor. You mentioned, Ryan, a pipe lining method that's
Yes.
only about 3.5 years new technology, but we're already using that currently, right?
We are using a lining method for the wastewater side. That is a
Wastewater.
UV cured in place pipe that is impregnated with a resin. So it has a very high structural integrity to it. This particular liner, it's not UV cured in place. It does not have a resin built into it because resin is not, it has not been adopted by the AWWA. This is more of a, it's almost like a thick rubber slip lining that actually goes through a hose pipe, and it has to have that hose pipe for it to function correctly. And then it blows up with air, and then it is cured in place. But it does not have the structural integrity that the impregnated pipe has.
The resin,
The resin impregnated
Right.
pipe.
okay.
But it is the only technology available for water right now that has been approved by the
Drinking
APWA.
water.
Yes, for
Right.
drinking
So
water.
two different technologies, one for wastewater, one for drinking water. The one for
Right.
drinking water is the newer technology.
Yes.
Okay,
And there is another technology that's coming that's being used in Germany and Ireland right now. Hopefully we'll see that in the near future because that will save us a ton of time and a ton of money on some of these larger line replacements.
so last question, we're not the only city that has 50-plus-year-old pipes in it.
We are not.
right? I'd just be curious separately to see if we're addressing this, not just in the methodologies and using the technologies, but also, are we looking as far down the road as other cities are, or are we ahead of the curve?
We have a CIP program. There's a lot of cities out there that do not have that. And we actually structure our program with an intent. We look at our system, we camera daily, we make notes of what has been identified as a problem or future problem, and then we build this fantastic list. That right there is, the blue is the water, the green is identified as sewer, and these are our top concerns right now. So we always have a plan moving forward. Our plan is normally built out in 5-year increments because that's the funding that we have available. And we'd like to expand that plan a little bit. We'd like to be able to build an actual 25-year plan so that the people that come in behind me, they don't have to work so hard to figure out where to go next.
Right.
No.
So what I'm gathering, and we've met a few times on these concerns, and I'm rather new, obviously, still to all of this. But the impression that I've been getting is that we are ahead of the curve and that we are going about continuing our city services and updating our infrastructure in a very prudent but aggressive way.
Yes,
And I
sir.
appreciate that.
We're doing our best to stay ahead of it so that we don't have to experience catastrophic failure or loss of service or interruption of service.
Right.
But at some point, as the infrastructure ages, it's a domino effect. It's gonna compound at some point, and that's what we're trying to stay ahead of. And that's why I bring this presentation to you, to let you know that this is the cost associated with that in the future.
Right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You have a question?
I was just curious, is there any mechanism to know when or what grants might be available as it relates to these type projects that we could apply for moving forward? Because we have some, obviously, from COG and whatnot.
There are some grants out there, and we do use community development building or block grant through Dallas County. That's our primary grant, and it hits a certain demographic area. Then it's basically quarantined to that demographic area. That's the only area we can use that money in. There's other grants out there. We do not have the resources to search those grants out daily because it is very time sensitive. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to lock in on some of those grants.
May I?
Particularly interested in the EPA and what they have coming down the pipe for this LCRR stuff, because they're going to be releasing a ton of grant money over the next 5 to 7 years. We don't qualify for a lot of it because of the demographic parameters that they set, the financial parameters, but there are certain grants within that are built within that program that we will be able to qualify for.
There's a site that nonprofits use. It's called Texas Grant Watch, and you can program in what you're looking for, and it will alert you and send you emails.
Texas Grant Watch?
Yes.
Perfect.
On your stormwater slide there, you're talking about like the Rawhide Creek, Queen Valley View. Is that basically, you were talking about replacing the gabions? I know some of those are settled and done things like that there and
Yes.
that had problems. I think
We're focused primarily on the areas of erosion through there, where the erosion is expanded up beyond the tree line. Those are our primary focuses. A large section of that creek could use some overhaul and some rehab, but we're focused on the trouble areas, the problem areas that are going to cause erosion issues or already causing erosion issues. There's also a couple crossings in there that people use, pedestrian crossings across the creek. Some of those need to be rehabbed as well.
Is there any better technology in the gabion things? I know we were very skeptical when we put them in 40 years ago, but they seem to have done a really good job of holding erosion and all that down through there.
So it's all a matter of what you want to spend. For the cost,
Explain, Gabion.
a gabion is basically a basket or a structure that's made of wire. It's filled with rock. That rock is in place, locked into place and stacked. You can stair stack it. And it's designed so that silt can still travel through it, water can still travel around it, and it not take a direct hit and pick up, flood, and wash out. That's why the gabions are created with the rock like they are. In our case, yes, we have a lot of them in the city. They do function well. They serve a purpose. They're cost effective too. For what you get out of them, the lifespan that they provide, and the amount of money you spend on it, it is a cost effective way to do business. There are other technologies out there. They're not necessarily ideal for what we're using them for within that park area, but they are available and we can always investigate them. In my personal opinion, and after speaking with the engineers that designed a lot of this stuff out here on the creek, the gabion is the best way to go.
I know we did them. We thought they were, a very cost-effective way to treat the creek, and I think it's proven to, in my mind, it's been money well spent on it.
It has served its purpose. The majority of the creek is in good shape, but there's just some short couple, 200 or 300 foot sections in there that have failed, and A lot of it has to do with the content of the dirt. Some of the dirt here in the city doesn't have a great compaction rating.
Other questions?
I don't have a question, Mayor, but I just wanted to tag on to what you were saying about the Gabions. I mean, they do serve a terrific purpose. I think they've always been very cost-effective. And as a frequent user in the park, I mean, they've done a great job. But as you pointed out, I've noticed over the years, there's some of them have sunk into the creek, and there's a couple of 100-meter sections where they're leaning and about to fall into the creek. And so it is something that does need attention, because it's, as we get these major, weather events, that's going to hit those hard. And also, there's parts of the creek that's the floodplain's relatively flat, and there's others where there's a heavy slope, and that's what's pushing them into the creek. Yeah.
Some of them do fall forward and they're falling for long sections.
Mhm.
It's an interesting dynamic when you look at them.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you.
I appreciate your time. Thank y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay, the next item is discuss future agenda items. We have quite a few on the list that's still out and working pending, so. You want any updates on any of that, Ben, about where you're at on any of this stuff?
It's a long list, but we're on track for all of these. The meetings are going to get heavy again really quick with the new council members in place. And so the big ones coming up, you're going to see police coming back with one that has something to do with median safety, which I believe is a hot topic. Other things will be slowing down streets and some tools for that. So there'll be public works and police coming again. In addition, we're going to keep pushing forward with different budget topics like we did today to set the tone for the budget discussions. So today we cleared that we are bringing the $10 fee from the staff perspective into the budget for council consideration, but also making sure we're showing the whole picture of everything that's going on in the budget and the challenges that are there and the solutions that we're recommending for those challenges as well. But everything seems to be moving forward at a pace we're very comfortable with. And if there's more topics, we're excited to have those on the list.
Anybody want to add anything to the list?
Well, Mayor, since I'm going off council today, I've drawn up a list of about 270 projects, and I'm going to send that to everyone in a memo. And so, I know you'll have a lot of
These
fun
new
with that.
smart
Yeah.
people figured out.
Exactly, yeah. I've been saving them up.
Okay, is that all we have going on? And what is it, 4 o'clock? Is there anything we need to do between now and the ceremony this evening?
Find some more money.
Find some more money.
Okay, well, if there's no other items for the study session, I will recess the study session and reconvene downstairs. At 6 o'clock, a council meeting, 5 o'clock, we're gonna have a reception for the new field folks, and so I guess we'll recess till that time.
Get you fed.
Okay.